Hello students, let us start with the next chapter, that is chapter 16, Management of Natural Resources. In the previous chapter, that is our environment, we had discussed on various topics such as ecosystems, trophic levels, food chains, food webs, and the various aspects associated with that. We had also discussed a very important issue, that is waste disposal and conservation of the ozone layer. The introductory part of this we have already studied in standard 9 in the chapter Natural Resources, where we had discussed about biogeochemical cycles. But in this chapter, we will be mainly focusing on the need for conservation of forests, wildlife, water, and fossil fuels such as coal and petroleum. Children, have you heard about the Ganga Action Plan? In short, we can also call it as GAP, that is Ganga Action Plan. The Ganga Action Plan was launched in the year 1985 because the Ganga waters had become extremely polluted and it was infested by a certain group of bacteria known as coliform bacteria, and its presence indicated the contamination due to these microorganisms. In 1986, under the leadership of then Prime Minister Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, the pollution abatement of Ganga was planned, and the main aspects were interception, diversion, and sewage treatment. In the year 2006, the Namami Ganga program, which was the continuation of Ganga Action Plan, proceeded, and the main aspects that were dealt with were biodiversity, that means conservation of biodiversity, Ganga Gram, waterfront development, cleaning of the surface water, sewage treatment, monitoring of effluent discharge, etc. Now, in the year 2014, that means the government went one step further and proceeded with the Clean Ganga program or the Clean Ganga mission, in which the abatement of pollution, conservation, and rejuvenation of the Ganga waters were aimed at. Now, what are the causes for pollution in the Ganga? The Ganga runs almost 2,500 kilometers. It starts from Gangotri in the Himalayas and it falls into the Bay of Bengal at Ganga Sagar. And all along it runs through various states such as Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal and crosses many towns and cities. And lot of untreated garbage, sewage and excreta is added into these waters. Apart from this, human activities such as washing, cleaning, bathing, immersion of ashes and throwing of unburnt corpses has further increased the pollution of the Ganga waters. Apart from this, factories or industries discharge chemical effluents into the Ganga waters, which has increased the load of production of pollution. Thus, the water has become very toxic and led to the killing of fishes and other aquatic organisms. Now, what are the 5 R's for conservation? The 5 R's for conservation are reduce, recycle, reuse, refuse and repurpose. Let us discuss one by one. First one, reduce. Reduce means to use things in a limited manner or use things less. For example, when you are out of a particular room, switch off the lights and fans or get the taps repaired if they are leaky. While brushing and bathing, should not keep the tap running. These are a few steps or examples of how we can reduce the consumption of natural resources. Next is recycle. We collect the waste, plastic, paper, glass, etc. and recycle it to make new things instead of taking fresh raw material. This process is known as recycling. Often paper is recycled and we get lot of goods made of recycled paper. Apart from this, the third R is reuse. That means to use a particular thing again and again. These days, lot of items come in various packaged forms. If it is in bottles, PET bottles, glass bottles, etc., these after usage can be reused for storing materials in the kitchen and for other storage purposes. Reuse is always better than recycle because in case of reuse, no energy is utilized. But in case of recycling, energy is utilized. Apart from that, chemicals, time and labor is also needed. So always reuse is better than recycle. Next is refuse. That means to say no to things which we really do not need. For example, say no to plastics. And these days, you know, the government is very strict. Plastics are completely banned. And we have found alternatives for that. And the last one is repurpose. Repurpose means certain objects, when they are destroyed or when they are broken, for example, the cups, if their handles are broken, we can use this as planters to plant small plants. So, instead of one purpose, we can use it for another purpose. This is known as repurpose. So, once again, I repeat, the 5 R's of conservation are reduce, recycle, reuse, refuse and repurpose. Next, what do you mean by sustainable development. Sustainable development aims at a type of development where resources are used at present to meet the basic needs of the present generation, at the same time conserved and preserved for the generations to come. Now, why should we preserve resources or conserve resources? You know that resources are not unlimited and the population is increasing at an exponential rate because of improvement in the healthcare. So to meet the needs of this ever increasing population, resources are needed, but at the same time resources have to be preserved. Now, how can we preserve these resources? For this we need planning, that is long-term perspectives. By long-term perspectives we mean that using the resources for development and growth at present for the present generation, but at the same time conserving and preserving it for the generations to come. That is known as long-term perspective. These developments and the uses of natural resources and the benefits of natural resources should be enjoyed by all the people, and this benefits should not be in the hands of a few rich people. These benefits that we get from the natural resources should not be under the control of few people. Instead, it should be equally distributed among all the people, or we can say there should be equitable distribution of this. Then only there will be a proper socio-economic development. That means development and the society's needs go hand in hand. Apart from this, when we use natural resources or exploit natural resources, it should be in such a way that it should not harm the environment, or pollution should be controlled when we exploit natural resources. For example, when mining is done, metal is extracted from the earth crust. Along with every ton of metal, a lot of slag is also extracted. And this slag is, since it is waste, it is simply disposed or dumped. And this causes a lot of pollution. How can this be avoided? This can be avoided by proper planning of how to dispose this waste. Thus, resources should be properly managed so that the benefits of it can be reaped by all the people, the generations to come, and also environment is well protected. We should not aim at short-term gains or short-term perspectives. Of course, short-term perspectives have their benefits because the results are immediate. But in the long run, it is not effective. We have to focus on long-term perspectives, that is sustainable management of resources. Thus, we have come to the end of this session. Thank you.